Hello and welcome to our first choice event in English, as you just have now figured out. It's already the 30th choice event that we are lucky to organize, and it's now has been 1.5 years where we inform you in the lunch break about very interesting topics of the climate transformation, where you always find best practices or experts who are telling us more about what to do to really reduce CO2 emissions. And today we are very happy to have our partner South Pole here. But before we start into the topic, I would introduce you to the rules, so to say, of this webinar. So first of all, we are using Zoom webinar, which means you can see me, I don't see you, but we really invite you to be very active and take part in the discussion. So therefore, you have the possibility to use, for one, our chat here. So normally you see it on the bottom or maybe on top, and you can always just drop your questions in. We will collect them all and answer them in the end. So you have the whole time to already comment each other or to vote some questions on the top. We will take the time together for a Q&A in the end, so that we have all the feedback together. And then the second possibility how you can take part is after the webinar, because actually this 1 hour is always way too short to answer all the questions. And it's also very interesting to see who's actually participating. So you have the chance to take part in our Slack community. You got already the invite in an email, and you can very easily just register and ask your questions there, or also post your own interesting insights all around climate transformation and decarbonization. So happy to see you there later. And why are we organizing these events? So no, we are not an event agency, even though we are also organizing the Climate Summit. We are a climate tech company from Berlin, and our goal is to transform all companies into climate champions. And therefore, we have built a software platform that's allowing companies to decarbonize themselves and their supply chain. And if you're interested in what that actually means, is that we have developed a data method to measure the holistic climate maturity level of a company. So that doesn't mean we are measuring CO2, but it does mean that we have been looking into all these climate standards that you find nowadays that help companies to understand what it really means to contribute to the climate transformation. So to reduce CO2 and to have their strategy and their goal setting, but most importantly, their actions aligned to international standards. So we collect these data, help you to benchmark and to understand where you actually stand right now. And from there, find actions and solutions that help you to reduce CO2 and to transform the company. And as we all know that the climate transformation is not stopping at the door of our companies, it goes very much beyond that into the supply chain. We have developed our platform this way that you can also collect the data of your suppliers and have validated data points from where you can transparently understand where the climate process or the climate transformation, the decarbonization can have the biggest impact. So you find the hotspots where to go, and from there, how to transform the whole supply chain to really have a positive climate impact. And if you are more interested into this topic, I can very much advise you to have a look in our new best practice guide. Unfortunately, it's just in German so far. We will work on translating it. But in that, you find 10 steps how companies can decarbonize their own company, but then also their supply chain. And you find all the most important insights that we were able to summarize from the Climate Summit that was happening this summer with over 50 experts and round about 600 attendees. So here you have a download link. Maybe that helps. You can take right now a picture with your mobile, then you should be able to download it very quickly. Otherwise, you can just go to our website, theclimatechoice.com, and you find it in the white papers. Awesome. And from here, that would be my part of introducing you to the climate choice and to why we are welcoming you here today. And the main reason is that we are looking into best practices of the climate transformation together with you. And that we are, lucky to have South Pole here today, and especially Adele and Julia, who will just right after COP26 explain us what it is all about with carbon credits, how we should use them, why they are important, and give us insights into the new market structure that is just right now forming around the voluntary market. And before I go into that and introduce the two, but I see already Adele. That's great. Hello, Adele. You can just come up. Also, Julia, if you hear me already. Hi, welcome both of you. How are you?
Thank you very much for the invitation, Lara. We're good.
Great. Yes, I would look with you then together into who is participating today. So for that, I stopped screen sharing. That's one thing I learned. It's best to do that. And then I can share a small survey that everyone should be able to see now. So we would ask you, if your company has already set climate targets. So is that a topic that you're interested in maybe? And we do know that everyone is just in the beginning of their climate transformation. So there's also not a wrong answer. We know most companies really just need right now a way to start. So, but yeah, maybe people are joining who have already set targets. So you can choose from carbon neutrality targets, net zero targets, science-based targets, or renewable targets. And I would stop the survey, and now you should be able to see the results. So most of you, is it really most? No. The most people with 35% have said yes, they have set carbon neutrality targets, and then 32% have said no, and the rest of you has said, different versions of targets, and 11% even science-based targets. So that's very exciting to see. And I have a second question for you, which is about your professional background. So that we know how to introduce the topic today, would be interesting to see from which role you are taking part today. So maybe you are a founder from a startup. That's very nice. Welcome. Or you are a CEO of a company, or you come from the procurement department even. Or you come from the sustainability department, or from human resource, or product development, marketing. Maybe you're a consultant or something else. So we have other, and you can choose what fits best for you. And I see a lot of people have answered. And now I would stop it. And you could see the results now. So yeah, I think with this topic today, it's not a big surprise. Most of you have a CSR or sustainability background. So you're probably very familiar with the topic, and hopefully you get a lot of insights today about how to go on. So Julia, Adele, does it help you for today's webinar?
For sure. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for introducing us, Lara, and a warm welcome to everybody who's spending their late lunch break with us today. Julia will just share her presentation. In that time, I can quickly introduce myself. My name is Adele Grundmann. I'm a sustainability advisor with South Pole. So in my role, I'm the first person of contact for organizations who are interested in taking action on climate change. Everything from wanting to understand their footprint, over setting targets, purchasing clean energy, to investing in climate projects for offsetting. So a lot of your targets or what your organizations are doing, we are helping our clients with. Also
Great.
with me.
1 second, sorry, Adele. I think from this moment I would just listen in the background. So I'm very interested to learn something new today, and then I would come back in the end with the questions. And happy to follow what you are sharing. See you in a bit.
Thank you, Laura.
And a quick hello also from my side. My name is Julia. I am also sustainability advisor at South Pole and also the country manager for Germany. So together with Adele and another big team, we're working on making climate action happen in Germany. Work with a lot of large German companies around the whole country. And today I'm going to be a bit in the background. So Adele will present to you what we are doing at South Pole, who we are, and what the best practices in carbon credits and the carbon credits market is at the moment. And then at the end, we're both there to answer your questions. So looking forward to that. Over to you again, Adele.
Thank you. All right, so after getting to know us a bit better, let's move on and quickly introduce South Pole. So we are originally a spin-off from the ETH Zurich, and were founded 15 years ago, which is a short while for a long-established company in an industry, but for the climate space, that's quite a long time already. So we had our 15th birthday this year. And originally we started off as a project developer for climate edging projects. That is also why you find that a lot of our offices are still in the global south today. As you can see, we have offices in Latin and South America, as well as Southeast Asia. But of course, we're also there where a lot of our clients sit, and that is mostly Europe and North America. And today we're almost 600 people in 20 offices. And as the interest in sustainability is growing, we also have been growing quite fast in the last couple of years. Next to our clients, we work with organizations, with any organizations in the climate space. For example, with the standards, which some of you might know, for example, the required carbon standard. Together with VCS, we are currently developing a standard for plastics, for example. But we also work with organizations like CDP or the Science Based Target Initiative, where some of our colleagues have worked previously, and then they bring their knowledge and experience with us to South Pole. We help our clients along what we call the climate journey, which usually starts with measuring the footprint and understanding the risk of an organization. Then we move on to supporting our clients with setting targets and introducing measures to reduce their footprint, for example, using renewable energy, and then finance climate action in the form of certificates for offsetting purposes. All the while, we also help our clients to effectively communicate with their stakeholders and support them in their marketing. Why the climate journey for corporates is important, we probably all know. With the current pledges from nations, we won't be able to keep global warming within the 1.5 degree Celsius. And more companies are taking action and are supporting the goal of limiting global warming. Some of the most prominent examples you have probably heard of. That is, for example, McKinsey, who have set themselves a carbon neutrality target by 2030, but also the big tech like Amazon, who wants to go net zero by 2040, and very ambitious companies like Microsoft, who even want to go carbon negative. But what do these buzzwords, carbon neutral, net zero, climate positive, what do they actually mean? We will have a closer look at those targets now. And start off with climate neutrality. So climate neutrality means that you are reducing your emissions, and then you're compensating all your GHG emissions with a type of certified carbon credit. The result is that there is no net increase in carbon in the atmosphere. Net zero, on the other hand, means you are reducing your emissions in line with science to as close to zero as possible. And you're increasing the share of carbon removal credits in your portfolio in order to balance out any remaining emissions which you couldn't reduce. And then thirdly, climate positive is really for companies who want to go even further and are removing more carbon than they're actually emitting or generating. So how can an organization reach climate neutrality, net zero, and climate positive over time? So as you can see, maybe skip forward a bit so we can see the whole graph. Thank you. As you can see, organizations can become climate neutral today by investing in carbon avoidance projects, which are here in green. At the same time, or even before, they would reduce their carbon footprint here in yellow compared to a business as usual scenario. Over time, the residual emissions that could not been reduced would be neutralized with carbon removal credits. And if all residual emissions are addressed, net emissions are zero and net zero is reached. And we can see that here around mid-century. For companies, that means that emissions in all three scopes need to be reduced. Emissions need to be avoided, both either inside or outside of the value chain. And finally, carbon needs to be removed through natural or technical means. And these steps are also in line with the new corporate net zero standard, which the Science Based Targets initiative actually launched about a month ago. I welcome you to read up on this, very interesting, and there's a quick and easy to understand summary to see how they are advising companies to pursue a net zero target. As I previously mentioned, both an avoidance and a removal credit are important on the journey to net zero over time. And according to the Oxford principles, the share of carbon removal credits in a portfolio should increase over time and ideally be at 100% around the mid-century. So now we want to look at how an organization can actually build a carbon portfolio, and what things to consider and what is available on the market. With that, we start off with the basics. What is a carbon credit? So one carbon credit equals 1 ton of CO2 equivalent, which is either avoided or removed from the atmosphere. It is a tradable certificate, which is generated from a specific project activity. How it works is that your organization would invest in a project which is aligned with your values. That project generates a carbon certificate that can then help your organization to become climate neutral or net zero. The projects that generate carbon credits need to meet certain criteria. One of the most important one is additionality. Additionality means that projects would not have been established and would not be viable without the income from the carbon credit. So there's simply no business case behind the project. Moreover, also important is that projects need to be verified by several parties. So first, the first party that would actually verify a project is the project developer. Later on, of course, the standards verify and also certify the project. And even while running, the projects are certified and verified by other third parties. There are 6 important factors to consider when buying a carbon credit or when choosing a carbon credit. That is the category, the type, the country or location, the standard, the vintage, and what impact on sustainable development goals the project has. We will look into some of these factors in more detail now. So firstly, what category falls the project in? So there are 2 categories. One, it's an avoidance project, which avoids or reduces GHG emissions compared to a baseline scenario. For example, you develop a renewable energy production in the form of a solar power instead of a normal power production using fossil fuels. The second type is a carbon removal project, which actually removes carbon from the atmosphere and stores it. These can either be technical or natural. A natural one would be planting tree or capturing CO2 directly from the air. Moving on, there are different types of projects. We differentiate between household projects, where, for example, efficient cook stoves are provided to families or communities. Renewable energy projects in the form of hydropower, wind power, solar energy. Forestry and land use projects where we increase or we protect natural carbon sinks. Innovation in industry by promoting, for example, energy efficiency. Clean water projects, which give families and people access to clean water. And then lastly, European projects, which can really come across all sectors. Moving on, what standards exist? Most of you have probably heard of the two big standards. First one being the gold standard, which is endorsed by many NGOs and certifies projects across 80 countries. Also well known is the verified carbon standard, which is actually the most widely used standard in the voluntary carbon market. Under VCS, voluntary verified carbon standard, there are two sub-standards. The social carbon standard, which is given to a project that delivers additional co-benefits. And is the CCBS standard, which stands for Climate, Community, and Biodiversity Standard, which is given to nature-based projects which have additional community or biodiversity benefits. That is also to do with sustainable development goals. So a lot of projects not only avoid or remove carbon, they also have a positive impact on the community or in general on SDGs, some of which you can see here. Based on these factors, an organization can build a portfolio of projects, which does not have to, but might include different project types in different locations. Having a portfolio can minimize your risk and also shows that you support different projects with different causes. Like I previously said, the share of a removal projects or removal projects in general should increase over time. And talking about removal already, what are the projects that are available today in the removal space? Of course, reforestation, afforestation projects are available. Secondly, biochar projects. Biochar is made out of straw or wood waste that is then converted into a carbon-rich biochar, which then can be used in farming and is actually beneficial for the soil. And lastly, mineralized concrete projects are also available where carbon is stored permanently in concrete. The process behind offsetting your emission has to do with retiring these certificates. So each carbon credit needs to be retired in a registry in order to be cancelled, and that way it can only be used once. So South Pole would take care of that entire process. After advising you on carbon credits and you choosing different projects, South Pole contacts the registry, which retires the certificate and generates an individual retirement ID and sends that with a retirement notification to South Pole. We receive that retirement confirmation and can forward it to you. Here you can see an example of how that looks like. So we have here the retirement certificate, which comes directly from the registry, but we also can issue a South Pole certificate of climate protection. And of course, we also provide marketing material about the project you invested in for you to share with your stakeholders. After looking at some of the basics of the carbon credit, let's now look how the carbon market has developed lately. And after all, it was a hot topic of discussion. last week at COP26, where some decisions were made, and it was decided that carbon credits in the compliance market, which actually covers one nation achieving its climate targets with the help of another country's reduction, will still be possible. However, it will introduce a word or a mechanism that's called corresponding adjustment. What does that actually mean? It means that the giving country or the selling country needs to add the sold emission to its national footprint in order for the receiving country to subtract it from its national footprint. So there is a balance of, let's say, the accounts. However, for the voluntary carbon market, which is where most organizations are active, the working document at COP26 is actually quite vague, which means it will be up to market participants to decide whether the corresponding adjustment mechanism is also applied. We expect that standards will issue their own statement on this, and that market participants are really deciding on how to move forward with it. I'd like to have a look now into how the market has developed over the last years, especially in the last 2 years. So this chart shows you the retirement of carbon credits. And as you can see, there's a sharp increase in the last 2 years. Actually, it's 56%, and with 6%, which is the largest growth with nature-based avoidance projects, which is the big peak there. You can also see that the demand for nature-based removal projects has actually increased in light of a lot of more companies doing net zero claims and the demand really rising there. And while the demand is increasing, you can probably guess that also prices have increased overall lately. And nature-based projects, the prices have increased over 67% in the last years. And actually the carbon market is still expected to be growing. And some studies show that up to 3.6 gigatons will be demanded by 2050. And the market price is actually expected to increase as well. It is expected to reach around $40 in 2030 and even above $50 in 2050. So we often get the question of how is the price for carbon actually determined? The price is based, of course, on supply and demand, as well as implementation cost of the project. More individually, the price is also based on your purchasing conditions, the volume you would like to purchase, as well as the standard and the vintage of the project. On the one hand, the money for a carbon certificate goes directly to the project itself, to run it, to monitor it. And also some projects have what I call community funds, where any surplus income is actually collected and then is really helping the community that is in touch with that project. And of course, the money also goes to the certification process, the auditing that is being done at the project sites, technical training, for example, as well as sales and marketing. So let's quickly summarize what we have learned in the last minutes. So when deciding on buying a carbon credit and wanting to develop a portfolio, you should consider different things. Most importantly, what category is it? Is it avoidance or removal? And what type of project is it? Then also factors like location are important. So maybe you want to choose a project you have a connection with, or your business has a connection with, as well. What are the sustainable development goals you really want to support? In order to reach the Paris Agreement and to reach net zero, it is actually vital for organizations to invest in climate action projects. And the voluntary carbon market is transparent, and it helps organizations to really measure their impact today and show their efforts. And finally, carbon credit also puts a price on carbon, and it therefore supports organizations in their efforts to reduce the emissions in their supply chain. Therefore, we encourage all organizations to start acting today. And the first step is always, of course, to measure your footprint and to set targets, which then should be followed by investing in climate action credits and, of course, reducing your emissions wherever possible. Over time, you might consider setting a science-based target and increase the share of removal credits, as well as supporting the development of new technologies, new removal technologies, for example. That's from my side. I think Lara also is coming back now, and we have plenty of time for a Q&A. So I hope you all had some questions, which we are really happy to answer now. And yeah, shoot away.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, first of all, for all the very detailed insights. I guess people have a lot to process now, but we already have a lot of questions also in the chat. So that is now your time to even shoot more or to vote up the question that is most important for you if you already find it in the chat. I try to moderate them as much fitting to the topic as possible. I see there are really a lot, but some people have also already started to comment the other questions. So that is really good. Maybe one first question that has come a few times. How can people get your slides afterwards?
The best way would actually to just shoot us an email, either me or Julia. I think you can, you can share our email addresses again, and then we're happy to share our slides with you.
Awesome, cool. So maybe Julia, you can in the chat here directly write your email in so people can find it. Sorry?
I'm happy to do so. I'm just trying to figure out how, but
cool. Yeah, you should be able to just type in it, and then maybe people who can't join the whole time find your email address and get the slides afterwards. For all the others who want to have the summary, you will find it in our climate magazine later, but in German. So I hope that is also fine. Maybe this time we write it in English. That would make a lot of sense, actually. Cool. So I would start with a question that is here on top. So first, in the very beginning of your slides, you have been differentiating a little bit between these different goals companies can set. So climate neutrality to really just be on the balance, and then on the really far end on the other side, you said climate negative, which is like the scientific description, and then climate positive is more the one that we find in the communication. And here someone was interested where we would maybe find a list of all the companies who really want to go all the way to climate positivity. Is there something where you would advise people to look at, maybe to benchmark or to find examples?
I'm not 100% up to date whether there is a public list, but what we have at South Pole is our net zero report that covers net zero companies and obviously also the companies that go even further. So you'll find that on our homepage, the net zero report that gives a pretty good overview of what is happening in this space. I don't have a list of just the climate positive ones, but I think the net zero ones already give a good indication of which companies might, go even further in the next couple of years. So please check out our net zero report. And if we can think of something later on, I don't know, Adele, do you know a list of...
I'm not aware of a list. I think most companies who really want to go climate positive, you've probably heard of because they are quite open about communicating that. But our report is a good starting point, and also I think just from a user experience, of course, the science-based target initiative has a great tool for looking at who is actually taking part in that initiative.
Yeah, that would have been maybe my advice as well. So I actually also got, recently a lot of questions from companies like how to set up science-based targets. Also showed a little bit the development that you maybe start with a, simple goal, and then you go step by step, and really the scientific version is then what you find on science-based targets, where you really first have to admit your goals, and then they get reviewed, and later they get validated. So you also find who has just been admitting and who has been validated already.
Exactly.
Okay, so yes.
Sorry, and maybe to add on that, Lara, is what a lot of companies don't know is that when you start with the science-based target process, you actually have 2 years time to develop your target. So you can commit, you can sign up to the Science-Based Targets Initiative, and then you have 2 years to submit your target. So this really gives you time to work on your footprint, to work on the reduction roadmap. And I think that's a really nice way of already showing your commitment today, but then working on actually making it happen later.
Yeah, that's really a good explanation. Also, I think when I started checking it more often, it's like a year ago or something, and there were like, I don't know, from Germany, maybe 5 companies or something, and now it's 20, 30 or something. So it's really a lot of people get inspired and really want to set validated goals. So that's really nice to see.
The Science-Based Target Initiative is not taking in any applications this year anymore. This just shows how popular it really is. So they're actually referring now to their intake of 2022, because they have reached their capacity at target for this year, which is it's a great sign.
Yeah. Good. So the science-based targets are, so to say, or like in general, your climate goals are the start to get into that topic, like to review your whole climate strategy. And what you have explained us now is really specifically the whole topic about the carbon credits, like how to, if you go into offsetting, how to see like which projects or how the whole process behind it works, what the market mechanisms are. And we have one question that got rated very much on top. So you have explained where you are buying the certificates from, how customers can see if they are like, I think you said retired, the certificates. And here was a question, because it is a market mechanism of financing these projects and to really invest in areas where maybe climate actions are not yet supported so well. So how is the whole financing process before the customer actually buys a certificate? Can you say something to that?
Sure, Adele, should I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is actually where we come in. So we are a project developer, and this exactly means that we do the pre-financing. So we make sure this project actually takes off, this project is developed, and then once we sell the carbon credits, this money then comes back to us and allows us to reinvest into new projects. So this is really a circle where we are the pre-investor. We make sure this project is developed and taken off the ground. And in that way, we also make sure that new innovative technologies are being supported. So, right now there's more and more projects also in the blue carbon space. So mangrove projects, for example, that we really try to make sure that they're also being supported. And in that way, we as a whole have the possibility to support not just one type of project that's already on the market, but also make sure that new projects are being developed.
Great. Thanks for like filling this gap so people can understand what is happening in the background. And obviously we are all talking about how or why we should really support these projects, if it is really necessary or if not. So I think a lot of people are also afraid to like take wrong decisions. And especially also at COP, this has been discussed a lot. And now I think I also have it here in the chat. Can you explain maybe roughly again, why these certificates are from projects abroad and not in Germany, and how here specifically the topic of double accounting was addressed, how this is connected to having projects abroad, and then there are also some projects happening in Germany. What is the difference, and maybe what do people need to know about it?
Sure. Adele, do you want to go ahead?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I mean, we develop projects in the Global South, but also in Europe. Most of our projects, and that's also where we come from, and that's actually also why we're called South Pole, are in the Global South. So we want to make sure that the money is being invested where, €1 can actually have the most impact. because for the climate, it doesn't really matter whether we invested here or whether we invested in the global south. But what is really great about making sure that those projects are developed in developing countries is that we're focusing on additional sustainable development goals. So the carbon is, of course, the main aspect, but then next to the carbon, there's, education that is being supported, healthcare facilities, gender equality. So it goes beyond carbon, whereas in Europe, these aspects can be supported less, or, well, there's no need to support them as much as in other countries. And it's much more costly to actually capture or avoid 1 ton of CO2. So yeah, that's so much to why actually the focus of our portfolio really lies in the global south.
And then I totally understand if companies say, okay, I know that with investing in these projects, I will not change my own CO2 emissions, and therefore are like really searching for a way to do it this way that is not greenwashing, and that they really just have an engagement and like a way to contribute, and rather to like use it in the wrong way. So what are, you have been mentioning already the different standards, but what are your advices? Or on the other hand, sorry, I'm mixing questions. I learned already I should do like just one question. So one is like, what's regarding the quality and standards? But then on the other hand, we also get a lot of questions from, okay, if I want to do something to contribute and to engage, can I not just do something locally? So is there also another solution if you want to have climate impact just in your area? So quality and local impact.
Maybe on your first question, I think quality really links to what Adele said with regards to the standard. So quite in the last couple of months, we've heard a lot about tree planting initiatives, various tree planting initiatives, but they don't really have a standard. So you don't fully know what is happening with the money I'm investing in tree planting initiatives, because there's no real standard behind it. If you invest in projects that come either from the gold standard or from Verra, the VCS standard, there are a couple of other smaller standards that are as well developed as those two, but those are really the most famous or prominent ones. You know that there's a methodology behind it that makes sure that the carbon is actually already captured or avoided. So it's an ex post construct, meaning that when you buy a carbon credit, the impact has already taken place. And I think this is really what makes carbon credits and the whole concept of carbon credits so special, is that you can be sure that this impact is taking place. And I don't want to make all tree planting initiatives, I don't want to talk bad about them, but it's just a bit more tricky, because when you plant a tree, it doesn't really mean that CO2 is captured, because this tree needs to grow, the biomass needs to be built up, so that this biomass thing, or while the biomass is being built up, the CO2 can be captured. So in that way, if you follow gold standard, if you follow Verra, you can be sure that there's a very strict methodology behind it. There's a third-party auditor that makes sure that what is actually being calculated by the standards is correct. And then there's us. So there's 3 parties involved that all want to make sure that greenwashing is not taking place. So our advice is always to go with one of those 2 standards. Now I forgot the second part of your question.
Yeah, I was just about to add. So what can you do if you want to have local impact?
Yeah. What we see more and more is that companies really, want to support projects that are also close to their customers, to have local impact, to really also, make it more tangible. So what we often see is that companies support, they do like a backing. So they support a project, let's say a peatland restoration project in Germany, but at the same time, the same amount of tons are also being supported in the global south. So that you have this dual, you have like a portfolio that balances it out. And in that way, you can use, the Germany project for your communication, but you can say, hey, we know that we're doing really, we're in a good position in Germany. There's a lot of things we, of course, can still do. But we also want to make sure that the most vulnerable populations are benefiting of our of the money we spend on climate action, and that's why they're going a dual approach. So this is what we see sometimes to, also have a local impact.
Yeah, I also like to answer on that. Like, I also see it on a different pillar. So you have these 3 steps of like first understanding where you stand in your, I think, holistic like climate impact, and then you really need to do the job and to reduce. So I guess that's really the biggest local impact you can have. And that's for sure not an easy step. So it really needs to look into your whole company performance, collect the data, find the sweet spots, and then also transform, which goes along with actions. And if you then find you can't reduce all the emission, which is true for everyone today, we also have to admit that there's no way to be, without any emissions. That's right now not the case. So then you can go into this voluntary market, but the middle step is really to go into reduction. So that is also where we can all start with ourselves. Here was an interesting other topic actually coming up. So we were talking now about carbon credits. And here, Timo brought up the topic of plastic credits or e-waste compensation as like a different mechanism. Can you maybe comment on that? How do you see these different mechanism markets? What are you thinking about it?
So, super interesting aspects of the whole carbon credit topic. And as I said before, South Pole is really making sure that we're not only focusing on the project types that are currently available, but really to also foster innovative new projects. And I think Adele already mentioned it before. We have a big plastics team, or a growing plastics team at South Pole, and we're currently working with Vera on developing the methodology of how plastic credits can, be developed, how the whole methodology is being set up, how you can calculate how many emissions are saved up because of these plastic credits. So we're working on these methodologies, but of course this is not something that is taking place within 1 or 2 weeks or months. I've started working on plastic credits just when Corona started, so yeah, already quite some time ago. And now next year, it's really, the standard is more and more being launched, and more projects are on the market that you can actually buy. So plastic, for sure, very important. We see a big potential there. E-waste compensation, I'm not sure if we're working on this topic. I know there is big potential as well. But I think right now, Adele, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that South Pole is currently working on e-waste compensation. Other big topics are for sure, more removal projects. So soil carbon projects, biochar that Adele mentioned before. As I said, also mangrove projects, blue carbon projects are a big new type of carbon credit. But I think, the longer we go, the more project types are being developed. So let's see, maybe e-waste compensation will be there as well soon.
Yeah, great to understand and learn actually that these processes like also take time, right? So to develop it, and I guess like to also validate that emissions are safe, you really need to look into it and test it first and not very quickly change the whole system yet. I'm looking a little bit into which questions we haven't answered yet. So there's a lot of questions around reforestation, but I think you have been mentioning already that this is like, from your perspective, rather tricky and like a little bit risk is involved, like to go into forest projects. Maybe one question again, like about the economics, because in the end, that's probably when you are doing as a company the step to like go into offsetting and buying it, it can be very confusing that there are so many different prices out there. So you have been showing the price statistically, so to say, on the market, but then you find something for like €1 offsetting per ton, and then we know Climeworks where CO2 is compensated by stacking it kind of into the earth, and there you have very, very high prices. how is the percentage is here asked? Is there something like an average, like how much is connected from the price to the actual product development or like project development? And is there maybe a price people should have in mind that is a normal price you should calculate with?
Yeah, price questions are always tricky, especially in the last, Adele, I don't know, 4 weeks. Yeah. The market is going crazy at the moment, which for us and for climate is great, because that means the price on carbon gets higher and higher, and this really incentivizes companies to actually reduce their emissions, because for them to then become climate neutral, it gets more and more costly. Why did the price increase? Well, first of all, this is a market. It's the voluntary carbon market, so supply and demand. Supply is limited, and it takes time for projects to be developed, for the whole monitoring and verification process to be finalized. Whereas the demand in the last 4 weeks, but overall in the last year, has skyrocketed. So there's just a very short supply, and this means that the price increases. Now, this doesn't mean that we just get rich and the money doesn't actually go into the project, but we always have profit share model where the project on the ground, so we're the project developer, but there's always a project owner, so a local organization that actually is on the ground. They get more money, and that means they can further develop these projects, make sure that additional benefits, additional co-benefits, as Adele has mentioned before, are being implemented. So this in the end has, the higher the price, the more the climate profits. So this is the one aspect why the prices rose. The other aspect that determines the price is really, and you mentioned it before, Lara, already, is the technology. So, newer technologies like carbon capture and storage, they're still very expensive, so that determines the price. Also the size of the project. So for example, community projects are very small scale. So that means there's no economies of scale, meaning that the price to develop such a project is higher. Whereas, for example, a renewable energy project is mostly a bit larger, and that means the price can be lower. And then, of course, also in which country. So we know, Europe is a lot more expensive than a project in Africa, for example. So there's a lot of dynamics with the price. It's not as straightforward, but keep in mind that the prices will most likely rise. I would say at the moment, the average price is around 7 to 10 euros, depending really on what kind of project. Can be a lot higher. This is really average. So hope this helps.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the important sentences is also like the risk of calculating with an easy strategy of just focusing on buying these credits. This is becoming like really a strong risk, because the prices is going up, because this would be greenwashing, and it doesn't like change your own impact. So I think that's really important to share, like, okay, the prices are going up for a reason. More and more people are like focusing on their climate strategy and therefore also buying credits. But that also means like all the companies are getting into actions and like really try to understand where they stand and like really make informed decisions about how to change and to be part of this positive climate impact that we all need to see. I'm looking at the time. There are just 5 minutes left. I want you all to have, not too much overwhelming input, but then also a great afternoon later. So I would say we do the same as we do normally. We copy all the questions that we couldn't answer in the Slack chat. And you are very much invited to answer then later. And I think Adele and Julia will later take the time. I would as well recommend you again to write an email to both of them. I think you can also find them on LinkedIn. Maybe Julia, you want to share your last slide? I think there was also an email address on it or something, right?
Was there? I'm not 100% sure. So I posted our email addresses in. So if you go to Q&A and then answered, I think the first question I posted
Okay, in the
So
answer
it's
section.
basically my last name at southpole.com. The same for Adele, a.gundmann at southpole.com. I hope you can all see it.
And even if you drop us, I think, a message in our usual website and mention climate choice, then they will get
everything works as well.
So I'm sure you're gonna find a way to reach us for sure.
Okay, yeah. So then we have made sure that you all can also get the slides. Maybe to wrap it up, what is it that people should take away from today's webinar? If you both would have to bring it down to one or a few sentences, what is the first thing people should start now looking into this afternoon? And what would you advise to get started on their climate strategy?
Adele, you want to go first?
Actually, you go first. I'm still thinking.
Sounds good. I think the one thing I would love for you to take away is that carbon neutrality or climate neutrality shouldn't be the main goal here. So it's really about addressing the climate issue in a holistic way. That means first understanding where you stand, measuring your footprint, then really reducing, and this should be a science-based target and setting a target, so a science-based target one. And then the last thing is climate neutrality. And only in that way you're actually credible, your company is credible, and you can make sure that, we have a long-term, we're going to reach our long-term goal of reaching net zero by hopefully latest mid-century. But climate neutrality as a whole, as a alone standing climate neutrality is really not what we want to support. What we want to foster are holistic climate strategies that combine reducing and then only reduce what you can, and then only in the end offsetting the unavoidable emissions.
I'm fully supporting what Julia just said, and I might want to add on it that the first step is to just start. No matter if you're a big or a small company and you have not done anything or you're advanced, I think the most important thing is to just start acting. And there's so many resources out there to support you in those first steps of understanding your impact, either working with a company like South Pole to understand that and then help you set targets, or if you do it on your own and to understand your footprint and your impact better for the first time, just get started. And that's the most important thing. And I think, a lot of the people working for you or working with you, your customers, your suppliers, everybody is looking to companies to start acting. So why not just start today?
I think that's a wonderful last sentence. Why not start today? And also from our side, for sure, we are helping all the companies to get started with the first part, like to really understand data-based where you stand in your climate transformation and to see how you can take next steps and develop a strategy. So we are really happy to help you as well or answer questions. And with that, I would say, Julia and Adele, many, many thanks for taking your time and guiding us through this topic, which has, I think, a lot of complexity, but then it's also very important to understand everything what's going on, to also take, again, informed decisions that are fitting to your own goals in the end. That's what you have been showing us. And who wants to join us again, you will have 2 more times this year the chance. So in 2 weeks, we are looking together with Patagonia, what they have actually done to have a credible, sustainable strategy and how they try to also build community around it and share insights. And from that, we are happy to invite you. Maybe an easy way is to register to our climate newsletter, so you get really invited to all of our webinars going on. And the last one in the year will be together with Baum-e.V. actually, and we will have a look into all the trends that we have been observing during the year and try to give some insights what's maybe coming up next year. So with that, thank you very much and enjoy the afternoon.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.